Welcome, everybody, to Bledsoe Said So. We have an exciting guest with us tonight, Cliff. And just a brief introductory for how we met. About a year ago, before we really started doing like the Patreon Discord space, I was craving some sort of interaction with people. So I would regularly hop in Twitter spaces. I was doing it about once a week. And Cliff was an individual who was hopping in multiple of them. And I began to notice his username, and I began to chat with him going on, weeks. And I really appreciated his insights and just could tell that he really knew his stuff as far as Enochian and astrology was concerned. And I just felt like, man, I really like this guy. And then Cliff, if you remember, you offered to do an astrology reading for me, which I very happily accepted. And we had a Zoom call a week or two after that for you to like get all the information and compile it into like a concise reading. We spent an hour on a private Zoom call, and honestly, it blew my mind. It's one of the very best astrology readings I've ever had. So we're coming in with a blank slate tonight. We've never covered pretty much the majority of this material we're going to cover. Everybody welcome Cliff.
Hey, everybody. Cliff! Thank you so much. What a great introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so
we're stoked to have you.
So let's just get into it, because it's a big. I mean, you're the expert. So we're going to be talking Enochian, maybe a little bit of Edward Kelley, John Dee, some very fascinating pieces of esoteric history that I, in the back of my mind, knew that I wanted to cover someday. But I think tonight with Cliff being on with us is just like the perfect opportunity to ball out.
Yeah. So. Okay, so where to begin? Let's at least define what Enochian is. Enochian is
because
basically...
I'm super dumb. I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. I was telling him before we started, I've been thinking about this for days because I don't know much about this. We haven't covered it on the show. I'm so excited. So yes, please inform my silly, dumb little brain what
you're great. You're great. So Enochian refers to multiple things at once. So I'm going to try to like give you the multiple layers of it. So at its broadest, it's kind of like this magical, mystical system, right? That basically is in the Christian tradition. So we're literally talking Christian magic here, which is going to like blow some people's minds. Like, how can you have both these things? How can you have Christian and magic at the same time?
That's mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. And the story of it is wild, and we'll get into that later. But so that's one piece. It also refers to the language of Enochian, which John Dee and Edward Kelley received during their sessions, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But it also refers to an alphabet, which is used to spell out that language. So it's kind of got those three things. And if any of you are a fan of like Supernatural, they actually featured that language in the show. And part of me is wondering like, I wonder if they took up this energized mystical language, and that's why that show was like one of the longest. It was the longest running horror genre show ever.
Yeah.
So people forget that.
You may not. Yeah, you may not know this, but so Ryan actually put me on to Supernatural way back in the day, and like the first few seasons, the first like 5, 6 seasons I watched, loved it all, and I just fell off at some point. So the Enochian stuff, did I miss it, or does it come in later?
You might have missed it. So it's Castiel is with this angel that comes in, and he actually sometimes occasionally will actually speak Enochian, or at one point as a joke they make him sing Enochian, but you don't actually see him singing it and all that. But it's so I guess a good place to start is sort of like the history and who John Dee was and who Edward Kelley was and all of that. So John Dee is what is sort of we would call nowadays a polymath, a guy who's like really smart about everything, like any given subject at the time. That's kind of who and what he was. And he was an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, and he actually wound up picking the date of her coronation, or the time of her coronation, using astrology. So we've got this guy who's already like pretty influential, and then it gets found out that he's doing that. And you can imagine in 16th century England, where kind of the church reigned supreme, naughty, we're going to go ahead and imprison you right now. So he keeps on getting in trouble for all of his varied interests that the church may or may not approve of. But he's kind of this advisory figure. He's very important when it comes to like navigation, and he's very good at mathematics and optics. And you have to bear in mind, like mathematics itself is practically like this pseudo magical thing for
Especially at the
people.
time, they didn't have
Yeah,
calculators, bro.
yeah, exactly. And they didn't really, it wasn't looked on as like a normal academic discipline.
Mhm.
That sort of thing is like, you're doing weird stuff with numbers and I don't trust you. That's sort of, it was like literally
Okay.
that superstitious. So,
Damn.
given the state of affairs in England at that time, he kind of gets in trouble over and over again because he's so smart. He's looking at so many different things. But and I'll try to like give a quick background as to why he got into these angelic conversations, but we'll just go chronologically, just give like an overview. So he
Yeah.
goes from this into from this he stays as an advisor to the queen for a while, for pretty much his whole life, even into the reign of her successor James. But he at some point he gets into these angelic conversations, right? So he's like, I need to talk to angels. And he uses this scryer whose name is Edward Kelley, but at first he uses an assumed name. That's always a good sign of somebody's character. He uses an assumed name of Edward Talbot, right? And this guy is a scryer. So really quickly, what a scryer is, it's basically a guy, if you think of like that classic stereotype of somebody looking into a crystal ball and
Ooh.
seeing this vision in that, that
Ooh.
actually was this idea. And Ryan, of course, you'll be happy to hear this. He actually looked through an actual crystal and could see
Yeah.
these visions in the crystal. And so that was his technique. He would do that. He was sort of like what we call nowadays a psychic. And so he hires this guy because John Dee isn't that great of a scryer himself. He's actually not very good. So he hires him, and then all of a sudden, bang! It's like they get connected in to this immense energy of angelic power and this massive, hyper complicated system that in some ways is sort of like an evolution of previous magical stuff going on at that time, like
Whoa.
grimoires and stuff like that, but really introducing this massive like mathematics and astrology. It's imagine like this 12-dimensional Rubik's cube that has to get downloaded one small piece at a time through this poor guy looking through a crystal ball, or through a crystal, yes, exactly, through a crystal, and then probably having eye strain. So that is sort of like how it originated,
And then
right?
you fast forward to
Damn.
2023 and we got crystal Pokeballs.
Yes, yes. They'd be like, "What? That's crazy. That's witchcraft," you know?
Yeah, that's witchcraft. Yeah, they'd burn 'em at the
Pocket
stake.
monsters.
Yeah.
Pocket monsters, yes. So that's kind of the story of like what Enochian is and how it kind of got started at kind of like a surface level.
Mhm.
But the interesting subhistory, so you all are probably familiar with like the Nag Hammadi scrolls, these buried
Mhm.
scrolls that are discovered after centuries. The interesting thing is those that they get discovered, those Nag Hammadi scrolls, but some of them are lost because somebody starts using them as kindling,
What?
right? And this
No,
so
That's
no.
evil.
exactly, right? So but there's a parallel
What?
here because John Dee's work, some of his diaries, he burns some of it, okay, just on his own. He buries other parts of it, and that part gets discovered, gets put in like this hidden drawer, and then it gets discovered like decades later, and or maybe even like over a century later, and what's the first thing that happens? The servant takes it and starts using it as pie tins, paper on the bottom of a pie
Oh
tin to keep
my
the so
god.
like some of this stuff gets lost, and it's just
Mhm.
like this weird, like almost like, okay, God is saying, I'm going to keep this, but I'm going to
Mm,
make sure that some of this is lost if you due to you're not
mm.
teaching everybody, treating everybody equal, so they could maybe recognize that this is important. So it's been sort of recovered over the last, especially the last 30 years. Especially, there's been a good job of recovering as much of it as we can.
So the very
Wow.
mind-blowing thing to me is like we're talking what'd you say? He's 1500s, right? He was alive.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
So we're talking about an individual or two individuals in the 1500s who had access to knowledge that we don't have in present time to develop hyper advanced entity contact. I want to know what they had access to.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a
Right,
real
yeah.
question about why that is, and the best explanation I've heard, go ahead and give a shout out to Kate Burtis. She explained that kind of what was going on astrologically was this thing known as septiles. So just a real quick idea is that if you take the 360 degrees of the path that the sun takes around, the Earth, the apparent path of the sun around the Earth, and you divide that by 7, there was that configuration of planets in the sky, like by sevenths of 360 degrees, that sort of was very active at that time, and is going to happen again, speaking to the younger generations here, is going to happen again in the 2070s. So I'm very curious about an Enochian 2.0.
Hope I live
That
to see
may
it.
or may not happen. Exactly, right? So eat your vegetables.
Yeah, I'll probably be long gone.
Just to make sure I'm following, then the Enochian is the practice of communing with like angels.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can
Whoa.
you got a couple of, there are different parts of the system, and we can go over that, at whenever you want. But at its core, it's basically, I'm gonna build a bunch of stuff that's gonna help what Jason Louv calls, who shout out Jason Louv, who helped teach me some of this. Build this furniture and use it to help sort of insulate this very raw electric power of the angels, and it'll help like keep you from getting zapped almost. Make this call in
Whoa.
this angelic language, and then talk with the angels. Ask them for stuff. They'll probably laugh at you if you're asking for buried treasure and stuff like that, because that's always happening. But they'll give you a ton of wisdom. So that's it. It's at its core, it's basically only 2 or 3 steps, but you just have to do a lot of overhead stuff in advance.
Like groundwork, like
Yep.
foundational preparations
Exactly.
and things like that.
Mhm.
By the way, I don't know if you remember this, Nick, but Jason Louv is the guest on episode 5 of the Midnight Gospel.
Yes.
The
He plays the bird.
Right.
yes.
Mhm.
So he's a
Is
prolific magician.
he no, he's not the French guy I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about somebody else, but I do remember who you're talking about from Midnight Gospel. Wow, that is
Mhm.
Yeah.
so wild.
The bird that
So
like
they
guides him
use
through reincarnation.
Yeah. So they use like they like feng shui furniture so they can talk to angels,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, literally, I'm not showing it to you. I can like show you bits and pieces, but literally, you all are. This computer is sitting on top of the holy table of practice right now.
That's
Just
cool.
yeah. So it's like, literally, you're using it to sort of get your. It's hard to explain. I'm not sure why this is. A lot of a lot of magical practices are more about like, well, we don't need all this stuff. Why do you have making all build all this stuff?
Mm,
And I'm not sure why, except other than to say, are you too proud to do this stuff?
right.
Are you going to like put yourself higher than what God is saying? I think that's kind of like some of the rationale for it. So that's kind of like just do what you're supposed to do.
So I have a question for you,
Sure.
and this is more so for the listener or for the audience. Like when I think of questions, as far as the show's concerned, I like to think of what could like shine an alternative light to that person out there who might be judgmental towards this kind of topic. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like for somebody
Mhm.
out there who's like, this is weird,
Yeah.
the word magic, how would you simplify the reality of magic to someone who has no clue what we're talking about?
Sure.
Mm,
So the reality of magic, I mean, there are a lot of different definitions. I mean, I try to take a pretty light, whatever we typically call magical,
Hmm.
beautiful sunsets, that sort of thing. We're kind of getting into this space where, it's sort of like, it's like this. Reality, if you're already positing the existence of God, and we can talk about the atheists later, because
Hmm.
I feel like there's a pretty good mathematical proof of Enochian and all of that. But um, if you have any sort of belief in the existence of God, one of the things that God has asked us to do is literally to pray to him, right? And then he's asking us to seek wisdom. Well, there's also sort of like that old joke about, if, I asked you for, for this and that and the other thing, and God sent you a life raft, and God sent you, all these different ways to escape your peril, and you didn't take advantage of them. So one of these things he's
mm,
given us is like history, and I would say magic is one of those things too.
Hmm.
Now, I try to use magic mainly to, help people. There are different people who will like take it in different directions, but that's kind of at its core is like the world is kind of messed up. We can do stuff to fix it. God has given us these tools just as much as he's given us any other technology. Why not try it out? and
Hmm.
see if this is going to help you out. The other side to it is that I think that if you take very much a narrow view of whatever the person in the pulpit says, or whatever the person on TV says, or this and that and the other thing, you will always be limited by their view, and you're literally giving up your own agency to
Hmm.
have contact with the divine. So those are sort of my
Wow.
rationales as far as why I do magic. It may not be for you, but I would also say don't be judgmental of people who do it
That's very
any
well
more than
said.
I'm not
Absolutely.
judgmental of people who don't.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you don't usually hear about, like you said, you don't usually hear about Christianity and magic in the same sentence,
Hmm.
Right.
but it's that's why it's so important, with so many things in this subject, the subject of the phenomenon, and the spirit. It's so important to keep an open mind. I
Hmm.
love the idea that just like science and spirituality go hand in hand, it's like spirituality, Christianity, Christ, and magic can go hand in hand too. That is just so cool.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I definitely think like I think people get way too imprisoned in language, like these self-imposed mental prisons. People take definitions of words at a subconscious level way too seriously, and that's definitely beneficial for people to kind of navigate language from a different point of view. And like I think, growing up as a very strict Christian, I'm sure Nick can relate to this. Um, Hearing the word magic is, there's two reactions there. The reaction number one is, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, it's fiction, it's cool. Whoa, shoot a fireball. And then the other reaction is, this is evil, it's demonic, keep it away from me. It might
Or
be
if you're my parents, it's Harry Potter is evil because it's magic and you're not allowed to
right.
read it, Nick.
Yeah. So
Right.
so
Yeah, right,
those two
yeah.
meet. But it's like keep it away from me. Magic is real, but it's evil. You know what I mean? So like I liked your answer there. But let me reform that question, because I think that was a great description. But what I really meant to ask was, in your understanding, why is magic real?
Okay.
Mm.
So, I mean, I guess experience is the
Hmm.
key of your results. So, one of the things I would say, I can say this about Enochian in particular, is that using it, I have found that I have found a very deepening, a process that really deepens my relationship with my heart. So
Wow.
I think, yeah,
Wow.
and I think part of what Enochian can do, if you're, you know, I'm not going to say it's for everybody, but what it can do is it sort of like strips away these nonsense narratives that we tell ourselves because we're armoring our heart against being hurt or
Hmm.
against, things being too scary for us. And that's sort of what I've come to understand, is that going through the process of there's a part of the Enochian system called the Aethers. We can talk about that later if you want,
Sure,
where
please.
so like the Aethers are, just really briefly, it's this idea of, it can be thought of in a lot of different ways, but one of them is like these subdivisions between earth and heaven, right? And there are different ways to approach it. Some people say you should start at the top and then come down. Other people sort of take more of a, well, let's build it up like Jacob's ladder and go one at a time. I took the latter approach. And I found that what that does is it sort of forces you to like confront stuff that you're just holding on to. And
Hmm.
the angels are like right in there. They're telling you, "Dur, dur, 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 this is another, you got to let go of this and blah, 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 blah." And they're sort of like one at a time lifting up a veil from your eyes until finally you get to the top, and you actually experience union with the divine. And that is like this crazy mystical experience where, like, the first time I did it, I saw like this bank of clouds in the vision. So this is all in vision. So I saw a bank of clouds below me, a bank of clouds above me, and in the center, a silver sphere. And the clouds had these flashing rainbow lights in them, in both the banks of clouds. And then the sphere comes up to me, and it's God. and he is, I can feel as I'm doing this, like this high almost coming on, not as
Mhm.
if, don't do drugs, kids, blah blah blah, but you can feel this energy coming on.
Like an
By the way,
elation.
yeah, a
Yeah, I
euphoria.
understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And boom, there's this, like, this big voice, and I've recorded all this stuff, but he's got this big voice, this big message, and it's all about love. This very getting a very core message of love that isn't just limited to one thing. It's like this very universal love.
Mhm.
So I don't see anything wrong with that.
Right, right.
And I can actually
Absolutely.
see, yeah, and I can see if you experience that viscerally, then all of a sudden, okay, I can't deny this experience, one, and two, I'm gonna have to, like, reorient my entire approach to life. Doesn't mean I need to throw it
Mm.
all away, but I need to make some changes here at home.
Yeah, so what it sounds like to me is in completely different terminology,
Sure.
you're describing a spiritual system that has genuinely helped you strip down the ego.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a
So,
perfect way of describing it.
yeah, I mean, that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and it's at
Yeah, it's
will. You don't
incredibly
need to wait.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's at will. That would only took me 11 minutes, so that was it, and then it was over, and I was just like, you
Wow.
get to the end of the roller coaster ride, and then that's it. So, but yeah, I that's sort of my approach. So I usually recommend people start with, like, the aethers that are lower, like kind of closer to Earth, so it's not too ooh,
Yeah.
just getting a decent start. It's gentler that way.
Yeah, you don't wanna
So
break
Yeah.
through to the highest level and see,
no,
like,
no.
giant green formless blobs or something.
Yeah. Well,
Like some
even if you
scary
yeah, well, even if you do start going at that highest level, you'll see something, it'll just be, like, kinda blocked off. It won't be
Oh,
completely there because you haven't
like you're
really
not ready to be
built
here
up.
yet.
Well, yeah, or, like, you can get, like, a hint of something, but it's like,
Mhm.
how much can you describe that universal love before you if you haven't stripped all this stuff? You'll get something,
Right,
but it
right.
won't it
Mm.
won't be it'll the signal to noise ratio won't be that
That
great.
sounds like descriptions I've heard of mushroom experiences,
Yeah,
like,
I
from
mean
people around me who have had experiences that are like, "I saw something and there was a door, but it was locked and I couldn't go through."
mhm. Yeah,
Or something
exactly.
like that, or there's an entity shaking his fingers, like, "You're not ready
Yeah.
yet."
Mm-mm.
It sounds very similar.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think, and this isn't, I know I started pretty hardcore at the end of 2018, but I had actually started in 2014, and I got through like 10 of the Aethers, and then it clamped up, and I knew it did. And I needed to, like, take a break, like
Mhm.
4 years of a break, 4.5 years of a
Wow.
break.
Wow,
But
okay.
then I started back up, and then I managed to get through all of them. So, you got to face certain things when you do
How did you, like, stumble upon Enoch? How did you or, Enochian, how
that.
did
Yeah,
you
yeah.
discover it in the first place?
Yeah, so like you both, I've been raised, in a conservative, fundamentalist Christian household. Jesus is coming back, the world's ending, all of that. And it was something that I rebelled against when I, turned that magic age of 18. It can be on my own, da 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 da. Da. But so I started exploring all things magic, and there was this, there still is this great place in Minneapolis, in a place called Dinkytown in Minneapolis, known as
Dinky
Magus Books. Yeah,
Town.
Dinkytown.
I've never heard of it.
Dinky Town.
It's awesome, right?
It sounds
Uh,
awesome.
I think it's changed its name a little bit. It's Magus something or other, but it's still in Minneapolis, and it's it was run by, and I think he's still affiliated with this guy named Roger Williamson, and he was a really nice guy from the UK. Always wished me have a wild evening, that sort of thing. Every time I'd read the story, it was really nice. But I remember just reading absolutely every kind of magical text. I took more of that Western tradition because that's where we all kind of start. Is like, how do we do this?
Mhm.
And our system, it isn't really as continuous like it is in the East. So we have to, like, have a lot of people figure stuff out, write a book about it, explain
Yep.
kind of like the basics, all of that.
Sell an ebook.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Enochian kept coming up as like, this is a really powerful system. You better watch out for this
Aleister
one.
Crowley used it, by the way.
He
Fun fact.
did. Yeah, he was
Oh.
part of the people, one of the later generations who, took the material he had and felt like the Golden Dawn wasn't giving him everything he needed. And he actually took his own
Mm.
trip through the Aethers, and the later Aethers, they were kind of locking up on him as well.
So, do the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn use Enochian?
Well, yes. So that the original order died out, but it's sort of had revivals that have, like, come back. But yes, they use that, and that was actually some of the mysteries they had for people who would like complete this task of, obtaining knowledge, full knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. They would teach them some of this, but it wasn't like as full of a system as we have now. We've just
Mhm.
keep on discovering other documents that other people have, shared and stuff like that. So it's been something that over time we've managed to reconstruct a decent idea from John Dee's diaries of what it was like and what it was supposed to be about.
Honestly, I feel like I need to say this for those out there who are listening. Aleister Crowley is a buzzword, very depraved, sick
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately.
it needs to be understood that like Aleister Crowley didn't create this material, and just because he tried it doesn't mean that the material itself is damned or cursed. And
Yeah.
like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is a very fascinating group. I don't know much about them. I have seen some material, Freemason and a Rosicrucian. This one guy, but both orders. You can
Hmm.
double dip in some of these orders. Had
Yeah,
sent me some
absolutely.
slides from like a Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn presentation that I wasn't. He was like, "Don't share this." I have a friend who's like really high up in the Golden Dawn, and it was all about angels. It was all about like lesser banishing of the pentagram ritual, which is like praying to angels in certain cardinal directions.
Hmm.
Trying to commune with Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, et cetera, et cetera. It's very angel focused. It's very like Christian type, themes. And I think Golden Dawn is like a pretty fascinating order because from what I understand, like what you're describing, they were focused on trying to use these magical practices just to enhance life and like reach higher states.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
wasn't a lot of the funny business, and that's why they kicked Aleister Crowley out, from what I
yeah,
understand.
Hmm.
yeah. Crowley, he had an especially troubled relationship with Christianity. His parents were also fundamentalists, but he was not treated well,
Mhm.
and you can
Hmm.
imagine like the times such as they were, that he, you know, it was even worse back then. Let's put it that way. If you were in the
Mhm.
wrong
Oh,
Yeah.
for
group.
sure.
And so the thing about Crowley is so he gets inherits a lot of money, and he can sort of live this lifestyle where he's searching all these spiritual things from around the globe. But he's you have to sort of contend with him because he's in this mix while we're all trying to like the western magical tradition is trying to like fit its stuff together, and he has all these contacts, and they're all trying to figure stuff out, and he's sort of like a central figure. He's also brilliant, but yeah, like you said, he also has I would not recommend,
Yeah, that's the thing
making a
about
lot of
Crowley.
Sure.
90% of his
Like,
Yeah.
decisions.
yeah, like Crowley, I mean, he really like the stuff that he published alone is enough, like in modern times, to cancel a person. Like
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
don't, not a part of me recommends Crowley. He's a very depraved individual, but the more you study, the more you realize that you can see the history of someone being drawn to these different practices. He truly didn't develop virtually anything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't quite say that. I would say that he took it in a direction, let's put it this way, that especially towards his later life, it was very morally questionable. His
Yeah.
early years in middle
Hmm.
life weren't quite as bad, um, depending on which parts you get to. But suffice it to say, the guy was very smart. He had a very good way of like explaining a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
But you know, I guess I mean, you can and he did inspire certain ideas and certain ideals that were probably needed at that time, like following your will instead of just like always looking to the rule book, like what do I want to do with my
Hmm.
life, that sort of thing. So I think most people, if you really read them, really understand them, it's like you got to have some mixed feelings about them, but overall give them,
Yeah.
Sure.
for me it's kind
Ex-
of, I'm
ex-
I'm more on this side,
It's
other
been
people are more
the
like this. I'm kind of,
yeah,
not,
extreme discernment, but like I
yeah, I
guess
mean,
to put it into words, it's like like he is an individual who has single-handedly tainted many practices, but like that's the crazy thing. That's the unfortunate thing. Like some of the stuff, and I don't say all, but some of the stuff he was saying was true. because
Yeah.
of his
Oh yeah.
affiliation with certain practices like
Yeah.
Golden Dawn, and he's gathering information from this order, he's gathering information from this order, and then he goes and runs his mouth and he makes all of it look bad. I personally think he was a psyop kind of individual. He was British MI6.
Mhm.
My conspiracy brain thinks he was planted in there, or he was published out in the the world or whatever to create this satanic panic kind of Aleister Crowley 666, don't get into the occult, it's evil, like I don't like
Yeah.
Crowley at all. I
He's yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk a lot about him, but I mean, what I would say is like he was probably like a decent in some ways he definitely was a spy, during World War One,
He
and
he literally
he
was.
literally was.
It was his
Yes, literally
job
was.
in
But I
World
think
War II as well.
yeah, and I think he also was this sort of person who, there's sort of like levels of intelligence. And I think after in between the wars, I think he was sort of like, okay, this guy's got some kind of weird charisma. So
Mhm.
we might be able to use it. So even if he's not actively an agent, I think he was, I mean, he was in the mix, let's put it that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think he was. I mean, a, a lot of what I mean, most of what Crowley was doing at the time was based on limited Enochian information anyway.
Mhm.
So that's sort of like the thing,
Mm.
the way to sort of wrap up his involvement in
Yeah,
all of that.
tangent aside, I just want to impress upon people he experimented with Enochian. That's all I know to that extent. He did not
Yeah,
create it, he did not develop it. It has nothing to do with him. He had a little bit to do with it. Cliff, do you like horror films?
not as much, but I've seen some. So what do you got?
There's a movie, I'll have to find the name of it. I remember the events of the movie very vividly. I just can't think of the title. And it's about a magician who so this woman I think she loses her child in like a accident or something. I can't remember. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but I
Okay,
know she lost her child and she's desperate. She's, grieving. So she seeks out a magician and they do I can't remember the name of the ritual. It's actually a very popular Crowley ritual, like Abramelin,
okay,
Abramelin or something like that, but the movie like shows in depth, the workings of the ritual, and it's a really cool movie. I'll have to find the name for you.
Whoa.
yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, the Abramelin, it's actually something that I did do, and that's actually they probably like twisted like what it actually is. It's basically
I'm
the
sure they did.
ritual to get your holy guardian angel and to
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah. That happens
Whoa.
in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and 10 out of 10 recommend that. Definitely getting that. You don't need to use
I
the
want to
Abramelin
do
for it.
that.
Well,
That
the
sounds
Well, are
awesome.
you sure?
yeah, well, the simple way
Well,
it's just a movie, that's that.
So it's not like a
No.
month long like isolation, all this stuff.
I mean, there are parts of it that could be depending on how, like the way I did it. Okay, this is like a weird tangent, but like the way I did it is I followed like other people who had like talked about their experience. So basically, you're supposed to like pray at least 3 times a day. And well, how are you going to do that? So like literally at lunch, I would go out to my car in the parking lot and pray and do this and that and the other thing. But I would try to do that, and over and over again. You're basically trying to make yourself a decent target for your holy guardian angel. Like, okay, is this person really taking it seriously, or is he just going to like, just give up after a little while? So like the easiest way to do that, Nick, if you are interested, is just literally you don't need to do it 3 times a day, and then there's a whole this all this other stuff with Abramelin, but you just literally pray each night, God, please send me my holy guardian angel in full knowledge and conversation. You know, so and you'll know it
whoa.
works if you can do it at will and talk
The
with your holy
movie made
guardian
it
angel
look way harder.
because it's a horror movie.
Yeah,
And
and I
yeah,
found it by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah,
look,
yeah.
there are a lot of steps that you can add in. It's sort of like you want to turn up the juice on this. How you can do it? That's a whole other conversation. It's a
Yeah,
tough
I don't
one.
know. I've been particularly fascinated lately with like the guardian spirit, guardian angel thing, and also like spirit guides
Hmm.
and that kind of stuff. And my curiosity is because as far as spirit guides go, the way I understand it at least is that it's kind of one of those things where they're assigned to you, if you can say it like that, or like before you're even born, or at the moment that your shred of consciousness is kind of manifest into this world. So is it, to your knowledge, is the guardian angel concept similar to that?
Yeah, I would say it's probably something along those lines. I think that what I would say is, I mean, I'm not, I didn't go to divinity school yet. um, but I'm thinking it's something I've thought about actually. But I would
Huh.
say that there's one out there that you can definitely, at least one out there that you can get in contact with. But the Holy Guardian Angel is particular, and I actually did the astrology on that, and it was like almost very complementary to my own chart. I have a lot of fire and earth. This one had more air and water in it, and you add it all together, it was like this perfect balance. I did the chart of like when it actually appeared, and like that was a whole other thing where you could like feel it come on. You're in this like weird trance state. But yeah,
Wow.
it was wild. That was quite a trip. So you know,
God,
war stories,
that
I
is
guess, right?
then you have communicated then with your own holy guardian angel.
Yeah. Yeah. As a
What
matter
was
of fact,
that like?
so you can do it at any time once you're successful with this ritual. Basically, it's got like a lot of overhead, right? So the idea is partly that you can use this. Originally, this idea is like, okay, this thing will protect you and all that, but you can also use it in case you encounter any like negative entities out there. Boom, you're in your place because this is an angel of God, so don't mess with me.
Whoa.
You can also use it as like this idea of an intermediary. If you're going to speak with any other higher angel, let's say this is the one you go to, and they're like sort of dialing it up.
It's like
But
your wingman for higher
yeah, a little
beings.
bit like a wingman, right? Like, hey, I got you,
I
I
like
got you.
that.
But
No
also,
pun intended.
yeah, but also it's sort of like it's also a bit of like a coach, a bit like a friend, a bit like just a whole blend of a lot of different things that's trying to get you say, okay, you need to get on this thing, or watch out for this thing, or here's some wisdom, or here's this other thing. I actually went straight from that holy guardian angel process, and I just knew, okay, I needed to keep going. And I was like, I'm going to do Enochian. HGA is like, great, that's what you should be doing. And I've been doing it ever since, pretty much.
How
So
would you describe the actual like message receiving part, if that makes sense?
right, so the way I experienced the holy guardian angel when he first arrived, in like this black. If have you ever seen like Galactus?
Yeah.
Almost like this, yeah.
Yeah.
He looked like that, except it was like it's sort of like that. It was like black. He was dressed a lot in black, but he had like this golden triangle at the center. And I'm not making this up, by the way. I know I've read the book and all that, but
No,
Oh,
I'm
we believe
taking your
yeah,
word for it.
yeah, it was just like that. And if you listen to him, it's like his voice is like an octave lower. He's like,
Mhm.
boom, you got to do
Oh.
this, blah blah blah. And so very authoritative. Interestingly, a lot more aloof than I thought he was going to be at first. Maybe maybe because
Wow.
I'm overly agreeable, so he's like, I'm gonna like split the difference here and just be like, okay, do this as that,
Mhm.
so I don't know.
Mhm.
But
But
he's got stuff to say, and he guides me. And there's a whole other thing, like I saw his sigil in the silver, just like the ritual says. So it was just,
oh,
it
cool.
works.
What do you mean by that? I must have
So
missed
you
that.
can actually there's this part of the ritual where at the end, when you sort of like achievement unlocked in a video game,
Mhm.
there's this part where you can tell it's happening. You're supposed to like have some silver next to you, right? So I had
Like
like
the
actual,
material
yeah, the
silver?
silver, right?
Like in what
So
form? Physical? I mean
physical, yeah.
solid?
Yeah,
I
my
meant to say
wife,
solid, not
Physical.
yeah, my
that's
wife,
of course physical. I
physical.
meant like liquid, solid, like
Yeah, it's like the T1000. Okay, it's that kind of stuff. No,
is it
so
physical?
but you're supposed to like, achievements unlocked, and then you're supposed to look in it, and like you can see a little piece here. It's got, this is a different one,
Mhm.
but I looked in it, and I could see, if you've ever seen like a flashlight, or a flash photography, when in a completely dark room and you get that afterburn on your retinas.
Yeah.
It was like I could see his sigil in the silver like that.
Okay, that's
And
cool.
it's one of those rare times where it's like, boom, like there's that actual visual that's like beyond just like, a lot of this stuff takes place in the imaginal, but that one, it was just like, wow, I can actually like see this.
Okay.
So
Okay, I have a weird, maybe completely unrelated follow-up question.
how could that
That
happen? We're
that
only talking
that
about angels.
Dude, that really kind of blew my mind for a second because the thing you're talking about with the afterburn, you can almost see something like an afterburn.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
Ever
saw
since
it.
I
It
was
was an afterburn. It was literally in the silver just like that. It was like that's how I saw
see
it.
ever since I was a kid, I see stuff like that sometimes. I see stuff like it just happens in my eyes. It's like I'm just seeing, and usually it sounds weird, but it's like vague geometric shapes, like really vague. And sometimes they move, but it's always at the center of my vision. It literally happened today, and it hasn't happened to me in quite a long time. So
Okay.
that's just seems really synchronistic,
Yeah,
syncretistic,
and
how whatever the word is.
I found that, if you're riding synchronicity waves and stuff like that, a lot of times what'll happen is you'll get like this energetic presence coming into your life. So like literally here I am, and then all of a sudden that part of you like work starts back up. If you want to work with those, my recommendation is write them down. Write down, make a drawing of what you see, and you may get a sense and intuition, what have you, that can be used for something. So,
Well,
like this is like a
one
sigil of an angel or a sigil of, whatever, so
yeah.
that's my
One of the
recommendation.
specific memories that I have with it, and this is just I can't even believe I remember this because I was probably 11 or 12, but, my friend Jesse Smith was over. Shout out Jesse Smith. You know him, Ryan, right? You know
I
Jesse.
didn't know him that well, but
Yeah,
everyone knew him.
yeah, yeah, great guy. He's
He's just a
awesome.
great guy. Yeah.
Um, I yeah, I remember he was at my house one time, and we were playing. We're just kids, like making up stupid games. So he's like, "Close your eyes, and I'm gonna move, and you have to like tell me where I am or whatever." So I did it, and I swear to you, dude, this is gonna sound woo woo,
Like
but
100%.
that thing,
Mhm.
that
Mm,
afterburn thing,
yep.
followed him. It followed him when my eyes were closed,
Yeah.
and every single time I would point, and he would be exactly where I was pointing, and I even remember him saying, "How are you doing that?"
Hmm.
And that was maybe the first time I can remember that thing happening, and it's so, like, random, few and far between when it does happen, and usually it doesn't really correlate to anything, but my mind is kinda blown right now that we're talking about this, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I honestly,
That
I've
is
never heard of anything
crazy.
like that, like the imprinting in the silver, and like I think it's cool that it is silver because just like the alchemical, relationship there, and
Yep.
that's super cool.
Yep.
I was gonna ask, is Enochian safe? Like, and when I say safe, let me finish the question so you fully know what I mean. When
Yes,
I
I've heard
say
it.
safe, I mean for the thinker out there who might be opening their mind to things but still are a little on the scared side,
Yeah.
safe in the sense that nothing dark or evil could penetrate through. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So,
Mm,
if you're worried about that, the first thing I would say is be a good person, live a good life, and be a little humble before
Facts.
God and all of that,
Facts.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe meditate a little bit. But it's sort of that phrase, by their fruits you shall know them. Well, if you're not
Mhm.
producing good fruit, then why do you expect anything? Something good to grow off of this vine. But I would say that it's high octane. I would say it's in the top three of octane things I've done magically,
Ooh.
and it's also very like very well integrated, let's put it that way, in terms of all aspects
It's
of
a
your being.
sound system, it's very well developed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's exactly right, especially in later years since we've done a good job of like when I say we, like the Enochian
I
community, as it
yeah,
were.
sure.
But
History of people working on this.
exactly. What I would say is um, the safest way in terms of like you wouldn't just play with gasoline in your front yard unless you want to be a part of a future meme. Um, is 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 to actually start with something very simple,
Mhm.
like start with one of these things. So we talked about the Enochian language at the beginning. So a lot of what was delivered was a whole lot of like, do this, that, and the other thing. Here are these and descriptions of what the angels are. But then the way to like make contact with certain angels in certain parts of the system is you need to make these calls in Enochian, which is basically a long, almost like a psalm, but it's in the Enochian language.
Mm-hmm.
And make the one I suggest to most people who are just getting interested in this sort of thing is make the call to this very low, close to earth aether called Tex. Ironically, I live in Texas,
No,
but make this,
come
make this,
on.
yeah, I know, right? But make the call to
Come
Tex,
on.
and it's usually just like, okay, I'm seeing like this vision, but it's not too bad, and there's like certain markers to know that that is common across other people. That's sort of like one piece of evidence that, okay, this is like a real thing, because how would these two different people who have no like relationship start seeing similar things? But that would be sort of like the easiest entry point, and that's what I offer people from time to time. Whenever I have time, I'll like say, hey, you want to like get on this, this starts this weekend, and I'll do it every 3 weeks just for free. Just read off the call to people, explain, give like a very shorter spiel of what Enochian is, and then just do that. And people seem to like it, and I haven't had any problems. I'm wondering, I don't know if it's because I've built the furniture and they're getting like that nice insulation that leads out over the internet or something like that, but I haven't had people have problems like that. So I think just because we
Right.
kind of keep it with the training wheels on, that sort of thing, and not putting a rocket on the back of our skateboard.
So it's all been positive for you. Nothing
um
weird. Nothing.
if you have to confront your own ego, that's never
Right.
fun.
Right.
But then you just gotta let go a little bit, and grow up a
Mm,
little bit, and that's
Yeah.
one of
mm.
the things it's done. It's really helped mature me, I would say,
Wow.
way faster than normal life. But doesn't mean I'm perfect, doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of ways to go. Nobody ever likes saying that, but it's
Sure.
true. But I would say that in that sense, Ryan, it is safe if you are doing it and with somebody who's kind of a little knowledgeable here and there. And
Right.
I take emails through my website, Enochian.today, and I answer every one of them more or less.
That's
So
Nice.
amazing.
yeah, so just if you got a question about something, just reach out. You know,
You're our resident
Reach
magician.
out to him.
yeah, reach out.
You're
Yeah.
you're you're
I
you're our
may not get
Bledsoe
back to
said
you.
so consulting magician.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
That's
all for
awesome.
free.
So
So yeah,
cool.
So you said top three. What was the word you used?
uh,
Octane,
Explosive,
high octane.
high
high
octane.
octane.
So
Yeah.
we know it's in your top three. So aside from
Yes.
Enochian, what are the other two?
I would say that
Ooh.
the Bornless ritual, which is a ritual out of the Greek magical papyri,
Ah,
it's very, yes, exactly. Our resident Greek.
Dang.
Yeah, it's very,
Yeah.
that is very, it was something that I mixed in a little bit when I was doing Abramelin, just to, I was learning as I went when I did that ritual. But so that was one of them. And the other one is this sort of forerunner to kind of this semi-obscure system. I actually know the original founder. The guy who wrote the book is not the actual guy who's the founder. If you look for it on Amazon, but it's known as UI Zelian magic, and that's like a whole other thing that's sort of like
yeah, I've
coming
never heard
out.
of that.
Yeah, it's because it's brand new, and I sort of helped in a small way bring it
Wow.
forward. But it's basically
Whoa.
comes out of like this, not an actual book of Moses, but it's sort of got that name applied to it, known as the sixth and seventh books of Moses.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah. But that one was pretty
Dude, that's so
powerful
cool.
too. But it wasn't
Can I ask
it
another
wasn't for me. Sure.
can I ask another kind of dumb question? Uh is Enochian in any way related to Enoch from the Bible?
That's a very good question, and the answer is yes, in the sense, so what the angels said is they come down. There's a kind of like this history, if you're interested in looking up Justin Sledge's work on the Enochian language, as well as his hieroglyphic monad. But what basically the angels told John Dee is that, look, this is like this language that was spoken by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and the last person to speak it was Enoch. And then they sort of have like this mythical tale of how that then turned into Hebrew. Probably not true from a linguistic point of view, but from a metaphorical point of view,
Right.
you think about a holy language. Well, Hebrew is definitely one of those. Hebrew, Latin, Greek, and then of course now Enochian, which is sort of interesting. It's got, it seems to be a language with basically like a lot of irregular forms. I'm not, really a linguist per se, but I think that people who really study it and really look into it it's hard to make an argument that this is not a language in and of itself.
There's a lot of precise math behind the language too. We haven't touched that at all. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
the 153 table and how it relates to like the Vesica Pisces
yeah.
and there's a lot of
Whoa.
crazy.
Mhm.
I mean, we've really been like
You
pretty
can just
surface level
barely,
because
you can
yeah, I
barely
mean,
scratch the surface.
there's
Yeah.
I'm asking these questions like I don't know what any of this means. I mean, I've never practiced Enochian, but I've spent quite a bit of time studying it, and it's mind blowing. I
It
think it
is.
would take someone like Cliff spending years and years and years, day in and day out, devoting themselves to this, to truly understanding it. And you've kind of really just stimulated my imagination there for a second. Like, are they or whoever the progenitors of Enochian are, you know, aside from John Dee and Edward Kelley, but the whole system is the claim here that this is, so to speak, like the Atlantean language that was spoken in the spiritual realms?
So that wasn't something that that Dee and Kelley got. I'm gonna like sort of take a step back and sort of talk about a little bit how Enochian is almost like you take this hyper intelligent guy, juice him up with a lot of divine energy, and it's like through that energetic current almost, it's like you can actually like his was one of the few minds that could actually start working with this. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't perfect by any means, but I would say that other people who have taken this have gone in different directions, right?
Mm-hmm.
My main thing is I'm trying to like see if I can get more downloads from the angels, see if they have anything more that they want to show me, and they're, if that's, if, I'm worthy or whatever the case may be, or if I'm chosen, that's probably a better way of putting it. But other people who have taken it, they've gone like, there's this guy named Daniel Rekshan, Rekshan, and he takes it through this like intergalactic kind of way, but everybody's sort of taking their own different take on it. Like he's taking an aliens, intergalactic beings sort of thing.
Mm.
I'm taking it more, I'm just sort of taking the system as it is, but there are different models that you can use to understand it. And that's why when other people, people like Crowley or LeVay are taking hold of it, they immediately want to change it into something that, I'm rebellious
Mm.
in that and sort of thing. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like any other tool. It can the what it gets used for depends entirely on the person using it. So you could use it for that, but I wouldn't say that they necessarily said that's what it was.
Right. It's like knowing the history of esoterica and all the literature and the secret societies and how they've like woven in and out of history. It sounds to me like the Enochian system is claiming. You just said that this is the claim that Adam and Eve spoke this language,
The
right?
angel said
Mm.
that to him, yeah.
Okay, so the angel said that to him. So if this is true, then just through knowing, the secret societies and the information that they're guarding, then this would probably be the Atlantean language. I mean, I know we're
Well,
taking
Mm.
two systems here.
that's okay. Let's
Mhm.
dive into a little bit of this because
We're
I
we're
this
stretching here, but
yeah, but well, so there's it's interesting how there are these different claims to authority, right? Like what makes something, how do you know something's real and valid?
right.
Well, it's
Mm.
got to go back thousands of years, otherwise, it's not part of this hidden lost wisdom. But you see what I just said? It's if it's there must be this old wisdom thing, and yet if we also don't want to like get away from this idea that we're progressing. Like we're getting better. So
Mm.
which is it? Are we getting worse? Or are we getting better? And it's funny how we never
Both.
really exactly,
It's
right?
duality.
We can do both, right?
Yeah.
Got climate
Mm.
change, but we got the
Well, think about
internet.
it. You you
Yeah.
you go to the gym on a Tuesday, you bench press. Your body is
hmm
sore as hell. You're getting
hmm
stronger.
Yeah.
It's that
Or
simple.
Mhm.
or you may not do that and then not get as strong and then wonder what's happening and blah blah blah. So there's this push and pull. But like when Christianity first was on the scene, the Romans said, what's up with this new religion? You ever see like the Book of Mormon? There's that line, let's go back to biblical times, 1823, that sort of idea
I
of
haven't
like,
seen the Book of Mormon.
you haven't, yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying like that line is like, oh, biblical times, like, 200 years ago or something like that.
Yeah,
What are you
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
That's funny to me.
Right.
Oh,
So,
because Mormon biblical times.
right,
Yeah, I
right.
get it
Mormon
now.
biblical
I get
times.
it.
Right.
Yeah. So like
Yeah, that's funny.
the whole idea is like, the Romans were like, kind of like, saying Christianity shouldn't be worth anything because it's not ancient. Well, now it is. You
Mhm.
see what I mean? So like, there's this idea of like, we want to idealize the past, is the past, but there's stuff that people are doing that clearly is interesting, right? And that stuff
Mhm.
tends to survive. But then we tend to think, well, all of it must have been good when it really wasn't.
I
You
guess
know?
more so what I'm getting at is like in esoteric. So I'm a big wisdom tradition guy. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I understand magic is real,
Hmm.
and my understanding of it is it's because of what is the truth. We are all a divine spark of the original consciousness.
Yeah.
So when you come in here and you set your intention on some goal, you can manifest it. You can do it through Enochian. You can do it through this. You can do it through that. I think they all work to an extent. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
what these systems claim is that there is a sort of twilight language. Like in the ancient past, before we were purely physically incarnated beings, there was an original holy language that was, and like in the Bible, you had the story of the Tower of Babel, right?
Hmm.
Supposedly we all spoke one language, and then boom, the whole world is split up into languages,
Right.
different languages to confuse us.
Yeah.
I know that when my dad was in the presence of the lady and these light beings led him to them, they sang in a language that he couldn't understand. He said it
Yes.
was heavenly. So
Yes.
I'm hip to the idea that this is possible, that there is some sort of language that we presently don't understand that has some sort of vibration that could, make wonderful things happen. I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, is it
So
Enochian? I don't
So
know.
I would say I would argue that there are probably languages that do that.
Okay. That's
Mm.
fair.
And I would say like if the one of the predecessors to like people are like, well, Enochian, that's the angelic language. Well, it turns out Hildegard of Bingen, she is this saint who had angelic words that interestingly none of them are you can't compare and contrast because there wasn't really a whole lot of overlap between those two languages, between Dee's Enochian and then Hildegard of Bingen's lingua ignota, the unknown language. But I think that there are languages that are filled with power, and even going back to like
Hmm.
ancient Greece, they
Even
were
like
these
Latin,
barbarous.
man.
Yeah, even like Latin, but like in ancient Greece, they would have like barbarous words that somehow are like these long words, and you find them in that the Bornless ritual that I mentioned, where they're just these
Mhm.
long words, and you vibrate them like that, and then all of a sudden, it's like you hear this stuff.
I liked that.
Yeah, there's this. I was in choir, so I have
I
to.
really liked that.
Yeah,
Hey, let's go.
but I would say there's a couple of things. So like on the one hand, there's like this practical, if I do this, am I having this experience? And you can get that I'm at this point now where I can get it like with English words if I just
Ooh,
vibrate it
okay,
correctly.
cool.
But on the other hand, yes, there are certain languages, Enochian especially, that have like that extra special sauce to them.
Sanskrit, by the way, is one of them.
Sanskrit
Sanskrit.
absolutely
That's
would
why
be one of them.
Om and certain
Hmm.
things and
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
But it's interesting that a lot of I almost wonder if the reason why John Dee sort of like got selected by the Angels is that he was interested, and I won't take up too much time, but I'll like
I'm
tease
on the
this
edge of my
idea.
seat here,
I'll
man.
I'll
Like,
tease this
I
idea real quick.
know.
this
So
is very interesting.
like real
I
quick, right?
yeah.
So Nick, you got your hand on the cat, right? But we got this
Yeah.
idea of the word cat, right? But we could call it anything. That's the idea of this
Right.
nominalist language, right? But imagine this idea of like speaking words into existence. It's sort of like that idea of not just of not just like I'm going to say the word, but there is the map is the territory. That's this idea of
Uh-huh.
realism. Okay, so nominalism versus realism. John Dee was very influenced by this idea, and if you think about it, the words that I speak, if I say to you peace, all of a sudden it changes your entire central nervous system compared to if I say any other word. But the funny thing about that is that
That's
it's
proven in
really,
psychology too, by the way.
yes,
I felt
but
it when
It's
you said it.
proven.
I
This
right.
literally
exact.
did.
This
And
is scientifically
I didn't
proven.
do anything special with that word, I wasn't
Right,
hypnotizing
right.
you. But the thing is like, but the thing is like if you um take that idea, you realize that that's just an extension of as above, so below. And
Yeah.
also, the other half to that phrase is as below, so above. So you can see why this idea of magic, it's like there's this isomorphism, like the same, God has created us in his image. So we sort of have, like you said, Ryan, this spark of divinity that all of a sudden is, oh, okay.
I can
So I
create.
have this responsibility as a
Hmm.
divine being to make things right and better for the world.
Yeah.
So that's kind
That's
of like that's a mind-blowing thing. So to sort of leave
no,
you
that
all
that
like,
I'm telling you, Cliff, you've had me on the edge of my seat, and an hour is not enough for this, and I have so many more
No,
questions.
no, no. Yeah. No, go for it. Go.
I have one more question.
sure.
Dang, I hyped myself up so much. Oh, okay. Is there are there phrases in Enochian? I'm not talking someone like I'm not talking about diving into the ritualistic aspect of things. Are there simple Enochian phrases that could be used as affirmations to raise your vibration? Is that a thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the one I recommend is monons, which means heart.
Monons.
Monons. Weird.
Monons.
Oh, so
you can sort of like you sort of feel that, and it's like
I felt it.
if you do that, you can, and then just do it. I noticed
Okay.
that first two words of that are backwards. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. First
Yeah.
impression of this is it's the same exact concept as like what the Eastern, Tibetan and Buddhic traditions are doing with the vibration of vowels to open
Yeah.
chakras. It's all the same thing.
And real quick, I'm actually a dual Enochian Buddhist practitioner. I do
Okay.
both.
You
So
just got way cooler.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, what? God, that's so sick.
How can you be both? How
yeah.
can you be Christian and magic? How can you be Christian and Buddhist? It's like,
pick a side, dude.
Bro, I do what I want. I do what I want.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Okay, Jeremy Bledsoe.
Yeah,
I do what I want.
What I want. Yeah, we got to do another one because wow.
Okay, yeah, no,
Whenever you
I actually just looked at the clock for the first time 5 minutes ago, and I cannot believe it's been an hour. Here's the thing. We say like almost every time we have a guest, like, dude, you got to come back on. I'm gonna put Ryan and Alex on the spot here for a second. Can we and Cliff? You too. You're on the spot too. You're in the hot seat. Can we get this on the schedule like ASAP for a part 2? Because we no, I'm for real. Like,
no, I know you
literally are. I feel like we just like barely scratched the surface, and I'm literally sitting here like
I can tell you,
salivating,
Cliff.
like
This is what, guys? Episode 94, right?
95.
95.
Yeah.
This is the quietest Nick has ever been on an episode, and I know that's how. I know that's because his mind is blown. I know that.
I'm not even kidding. I'm gonna be texting y'all every single day. Like, is Cliff on the schedule? Like, I need part 2. I feel like a fan right now. Like, I need part 2 now.
Whenever you want. I'll make room. I knew really early on talking with Ryan. Okay, there's going to be a part. I'm going to be playing some kind of part in this small.
And I feel bad because I asked you like a year ago, and that's just how life goes. And I'm so sorry
Ryan,
it took so long.
You are so humble right now. Ryan is probably one of the busiest people I know. I'm not like, I'm not in his life, but I just know, dude has got to be insanely busy. So
I am, but like,
that's true.
Still, I mean, I hope there's no hard feelings over that. It's really
not at all.
There's so much going on, and like this was an amazing episode. I'm glad it took so long because exactly how it played out now, it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
Then,
and by the way, it's my birthday tomorrow, so you guys just made it awesome. So
oh my god,
happy birthday.
Thank you. It was so much fun. This was like the best present I could have gotten from y'all.
So tomorrow is April 26th. By the time this comes out, it's going to be May or June because, as you know, we are front loaded.
Absolutely.
But we're going to travel through time here. As of today's date, happy early birthday. And then for the Omies, when this airs, you go give him a happy late birthday. Cliff, please tag whatever it is you want people to find.
Okay, yeah, real quick. So my website is Enochian.today. Little probably, arrogant of me to name it that because there are a lot of other people, but I bring a lot of other people in. So and for astrology, go to yourlightbridge.com and just try to find the email. I haven't updated that because I'm also like more busy than I let on. But I really appreciate you having me. It was a real honor and a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
It was a blast.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm going to be upset with Ryan and Alex if this doesn't get on the schedule very soon for part 2 because I need more now. That was so good, dude. I couldn't even say anything because I just wanted to listen. That was incredible, Cliff. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Likewise, we're going to make it happen again, Cliff.
Great.
Yeah,
thank you
all. That was so awesome.
All right. I wish we yeah, you know what to say, right?
Yep.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more, check out our other videos.
And before you go, don't forget to subscribe. See you next week.
Peace.